Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. Israel's land operation intensifies in Gaza, particularly in the north, amid diplomatic stalemate over humanitarian ceasefire. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas in West Bank amidst Gaza conflict to also visit Turkey. India and South Africa clash at Eden Gardens. India off to a good start after opting to bat first. Israel's military released footage on Sunday of what they say is the latest footage of tanks and soldiers in Gaza as the land operation unfolds amid a diplomatic stalemate of a humanitarian ceasefire for embattled enclave. In the video, soldiers are seen walking amid rubble, tanks firing and large explosions. Israel continues to strike Gaza Strip by air, sea and ground overnight. Gaza health officials say Israeli airstrikes destroyed a cluster of houses in Maghazi refugee camp in central Gaza. Health officials on Saturday said more than 9,488 Palestinians have been killed in the war, which began when Hamas terrorists launched a surprise attack on southern Israel on October 7th, killing some 1,400 people and taking more than 240 people hostage. The Israel-Hamas conflict has claimed over 11,000 lives so far. Israeli defense forces say it will continue airstrikes to damage infrastructure, weapons warehouses and operational bases of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Here's more.
This is day 30 of the Israel-Gaza conflict. Fighting between Israeli defense forces and Palestinian militant group Hamas has intensified in Gaza. As this crisis deepens with each passing day, it has left the Arab world and other countries in the region anxious. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is once again in the Middle East and has held several rounds of talks with leaders of the region. Countries like Jordan and Egypt have insisted on ending hostilities in Gaza. But the US said such a pause for now would only allow Hamas to regroup and attack Israel again.
It's our view that a ceasefire now would simply leave Hamas in place, able to regroup and repeat what it did on October 7th.
Blinken, who is on his second trip to the region since Israel-Hamas conflict broke on October 7, also met with the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank. While Israel is fighting Hamas in Gaza, it's Hezbollah that launched strikes on the northern front of Israel bordering Lebanon. Hamas has taken more than 200 people hostage. It's been a month. Families are eagerly waiting for their loved ones. Thousands have been killed. Over 1/3 of them are children. Hospitals are running out of medicines and supplies in Gaza. West Asia is on the brink of a major humanitarian crisis. Abhishek Bose for DD India.
In a show of solidarity with Israel's fight against Hamas, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and former Australian PM Scott Morrison have arrived in Israel. The two leaders will also visit southern Gaza border towns that have been devastated by Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. And President Katalin Novak of Hungary has also arrived in Israel on a solidarity visit. She met Israeli President Isaac Herzog. Meanwhile, Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani on Sunday said there had been false reports on negotiations to release Israeli hostages held in Gaza without elaborating. Al Thani said during a news conference in Doha with French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna that there were complexities in the field due to Israeli military practices in Gaza. And while diplomatic efforts intensify, DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh was at the Golan Heights on the Israel-Syria border, gives us the latest on the threat of regional escalation of Israel-Hamas conflict.
I'm right now standing at the Golan Heights. This is the border that you see behind me, is the border of Israel with Syria. So right now, the threat of a regional escalation looms large, though Syria has been, quite, its military capabilities have been depleted by the constant conflict that is going on in Syria, or the civil war, which has been going on for more than 2 years. But Iran's proxies are still active, and that is what the international community is concerned about, that if Iran starts acting through its proxies out of Syria, the Hezbollah anyway is backed by Iran and also the Hamas, so it could spill over. There could be a regional escalation, and the world cannot afford a second war. Right now, the first war, Ukraine-Russia crisis anyway, has affected global supply chains, and another war would mean disaster for the world. And that is why you see hectic diplomacy. Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, was in Tel Aviv. He held long meetings with Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet, and later traveled to Jordan to see, with two objectives. One, to see that it does not escalate beyond Hamas and Israel, and the second, to see how humanitarian aid can be increased into the Gaza Strip, because there's a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding there. Amritpal Singh for DD India at the Golan Heights.
The United Nations teams in Nepal are responding to the devastating earthquake in west of the country. Over 150 people have been killed, hundreds more were injured. The powerful 6.4 magnitude earthquake struck the remote and rural districts on Friday. UN Children's Fund representative to Nepal said children and their families are most at risk. Other United Nations agencies have also stepped up their response. World Health Organization is mobilizing medical teams, and the UN Satellite Center has been activated to conduct remote damage assessment via satellite image analysis. Meanwhile, Nepal's government has decided to provide around $1,500 those who died due to the earthquake. A government spokesperson said this assistance is the first phase of immediate relief. The government has decided to provide rupees 50 million each to quake-hit districts. The government is to provide free medical treatment to those injured in the earthquake. Work of search and rescue of those affected by the Jajarkot earthquake has reached its final phase this morning. Meanwhile, Nepal Deputy Prime Minister Bahadur Khadka said the country has deployed its military forces to race against time to rescue all the injured.
First, we have to rescue all those injured people who are treated at local hospitals and clinics. Seriously injured people will be sent to other hospitals by 2 military helicopters, and 3 other small military helicopters will also participate in the rescue. In the initial stage, we will treat the injured in different hospitals in the region.
India's High Commissioner to Canada, Sanjay Kumar Verma, reiterated New Delhi's stand on the diplomatic standoff with Canada and urged Ottawa to release evidence backing up its allegations regarding the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Verma stressed that India has not been shown concrete evidence by Canada or its allies about India's alleged involvement in Nijjar's killing. The Indian envoy made the remarks in an interview with the Canadian Daily. Malaysian Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Zamri Abdul Qadir is visiting India from today. The visiting dignitary will co-chair the 6th India-Malaysia Joint Commission meeting with Indian counterpart Dr. S. Shankar during his two-day visit. The Joint Commission meeting will review the progress of enhanced strategic partnership with Malaysia in several areas. He will also call on India's Vice President. The visit will provide an opportunity to comprehensively review bilateral relations and to explore ways to further deepen and strengthen them. Former US President Donald Trump targeted his Republican rivals at a campaign event in Florida. Trump called the indictments part of a politically motivated witch hunt to thwart his political pursuit. Facing a series of criminal charges, Donald Trump has embraced his indictments in 4 separate state criminal cases. This has in fact boosted his popularity among Republicans and made him the front-runner in his party's race for the presidential nomination. Trump has vowed to enact tougher immigration restrictions and harsher curbs on trade with China and to carry out political reprisals against those he perceives to have wronged him. And we're heading for a short break, but still to come on DD India News Hour. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese talks of constructive engagement and dialogue with China. Russia's new nuclear submarine carries out successful test launch of Belava ballistic missile. European Commission chief says Ukraine has made excellent progress towards EU accession.
How do you evaluate ISA's progress so far? Are you satisfied with it?
In terms of money, in terms of programs, in terms of membership, all have gone up dramatically.
Has India played a satisfactory leadership role in ISA?
The Indian experience has led the ISA. Also, Indian financial resources have been at the heart of ISA moving ahead.
Who foots the bill around the world for solar energy?
Largely the private sector, but government guarantees are important for this to move into areas which are yet underserved by the private sector financing.
What is the first target that you would like to achieve?
The first target is get the regulatory structures in place so that solar becomes the energy source of choice.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, and we return to our top story, our special coverage of the Gaza conflict. DD India's correspondent Amritpal Singh joins us from Israel-Lebanon border. Amrit, first, if you could take us through the situation at the border as we speak.
The border with Lebanon is heating up by the day. Hezbollah keeps firing missiles into Syrian territory, as Hassan Nasrallah had said that we will keep the Israeli army engaged on the northern border so that their military efforts are divided between the north and the south. Though it's not, as severe as can be, because given Hezbollah's capability, they haven't jumped in all out. But they've threatened to do so, but they keep constantly firing missiles, especially in places like Syria, Kimona, where I am. These villages, the border has been evacuated. You can see behind me that absolutely ghost villages. Nobody here, only the military and a few media persons. And, all the time, rockets from Lebanon keep coming and hitting targets here, though many of them are neutralized by the Israeli army or the Israeli defense forces, and Israel constantly keeps hitting back at the source of the Lebanese, at the source of Hezbollah, about 50 odd, 57 by Nasrallah's admission have died. Hezbollah fighters have died. The Israeli soldiers have also been killed. One Reuters journalist was killed in Lebanon. So that continuously happens on the Lebanon border. Yeah, Shiven.
Right. Amrit, and what is the direction in which the conflict in Gaza is headed while the calls for ceasefire are getting louder?
There are calls for ceasefire. You're right, they're getting louder and more calls for ceasefire by the international community, but Israel seems to be in no mood to for any ceasefire. Last night alone, it hit 2,500 targets through missiles, and they are at the gates of Gaza now. They are going in for close combat. The Hamas guerrillas are, they come out, attack them, they go back into their tunnels. Now, I guess in a few days, the next stage would be when they will either have to go into the tunnels or, they don't share all that military strategy with us, but we hear from here and there that they could use gas, water, etc. to flush the tunnels and flush out the Hamas, and once they are overground, then get into close combat. But the situation of close combat is fast approaching. They are just waiting for, to get out as many civilians as they can. They opened the road, the Salahuddin highway from, the Gaza city to south. But hardly any vehicles passed through that. There was an attack by Hamas on that. There are claims and counterclaims. But it looks like that they are not going to stop. Benjamin Netanyahu time and again has told all world leaders who have called him, or some calling on Tel Aviv, that we will not stop unless our military objective of completely decimating Hamas militarily, which basically means the Izzuddin al-Qassam brigade, and also politically settling the Hamas by virtually killing them all. So that is their stated military objective, and they say unless that is achieved, they will not cease fire.
Right. Amrit, Antony Blinken, Secretary of State of the U.S., is visiting West Asia again. How do we see the significance of this visit, particularly his outreach to the Arab leaders?
It is, there is hectic diplomacy. The meetings that we saw in Amman yesterday, both with the Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister, with the King of Jordan, with UAE was there. His outreach to the Arab leaders is essentially to see that the war does not escalate into a regional conflict. But they were very difficult meetings. If you saw the outcome yesterday on the statements made by the Arabs, they told the Americans very clearly that we want a ceasefire and the Americans should use their influence over the Israelis. But the problem really for Blinken is that the Israelis aren't listening to the Americans. Or that at least, that is the sort of helplessness the Americans express. Unless, of course, the Americans have an understanding with the Israelis that we carry on, we will call for ceasefire, do a lip service, etc. But all those are assessments and opinions. The fact remains the Israelis are going ahead. But the Americans publicly have called for Joe Biden has called for a humanitarian pause. Benjamin Netanyahu told Antony Blinken in Tel Aviv there is no question of a humanitarian pause. Those who can get out should get out. Rest, if they die, they die. We will not stop unless we complete our military objective. So the Americans are trying to, one, see humanitarian aid goes in. If the Israelis are not going to stop. And second, the civilian casualties are minimized. And third objective is that this does not escalate. So the fourth objective, the mediation through Qatar to get the hostages released to them.
Right. With that point, once again, about the latest on the hostages situation, because Qatari Prime Minister speaks about these false reports of Qatar negotiating for the release of these hostages. What is happening on that front?
Qatar is mediating, but yesterday what you saw from come out from Qatar saying that it's a very difficult situation. And the continued airstrikes by Israel are making the situation worse. I'll tell you what is really happening. Hamas has put its demand clearly. Hamas has said we will release hostages if you stop, if you cease fire, if you stop pounding us. And the other thing that they want is a prisoner swap. They say, give us the Palestinian prisoners you have in Israeli prison. These are their two immediate demands. They also put long-term demands like stop Israeli settlements in West Bank, stop lift the C-17-year siege on, the Gaza Strip, etc. The Israelis are in no mutual relationship. Benjamin Netanyahu has made it very clear there is no ceasefire. He believes that the hostages will only be released by Hamas if they tighten the noose on them, if when they feel the military pressure. In fact, there are protests happening outside Netanyahu's home. The families of the hostages, I'm talking about Jewish hostages, have pitched tents at the gate of the Kiryat, a military base in Tel Aviv. They are protesting outside Benjamin Netanyahu's home, saying, "You haven't done enough." The war cabinet is in no mood to listen to even the hostages' families. They've been telling them that, look, they will not release hostages even after prisoner swap. They will kill them. And the only way to get them released is step up the military pressure on them. And that is what our strategy is. And he keeps promising them that we'll get each and every one of your kith and kin back home. So, on the hostages, basically both sides are not relenting. And it's almost, a month or close to a month since the hostages were taken. And only 5 of them have been released, and the situation remains like that. Meanwhile, Hamas keep making claims which I cannot verify or vouch for the veracity. They say 50 to 60 hostages have died in Israeli strikes. One doesn't know if that is true as part of the explanation.
Okay, there. Amrit, thanks very much for joining us with those updates. Stay safe as your team gets us the latest from the conflict zone. Chinese Premier Li Qiang has said China will further expand market access and imports. Addressing the opening ceremony of the annual China International Import Expo in Shanghai on Sunday, Li Qiang said, promote opening up and market opportunities and remove barriers to foreign investments in manufacturing.
We will continue to promote opening up and market opportunities. We will further ease market access, implementing relevant policies such as lifting all restrictions on foreign investment in the manufacturing sector, protect the rights and interests of foreign investors in accordance with the law, and continue to create a marketization, legal, and international business environment.
Meanwhile, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says it is in Australia's interest to have bilateral relationship with China that was based on constructive engagement and dialogue. This is the first visit of an Australian leader to China in 7 years.
And we know that constructive economic engagement between countries helps to build relationships and helps to build understanding, both of common interests and where there are differences. And that is why the government that I lead will continue to work constructively with China. As the business people in this room understand so well, it is in all our interests to have a relationship where there is dialogue and cooperation. Along with the other economies in our region, Australia and China have prospered thanks to the certainty and stability that is made possible by rules-based trade. Every country has a role to play in advancing trade that is both sustainable and inclusive.
Russia's new nuclear-powered submarine Imperator Alexander III carried out successful test launch of Bulava ballistic missile from White Sea. Russian state news agencies reported on Sunday, citing the Russian Defense Ministry. Russian President Putin has been pushing for Russia to maintain its nuclear deterrent to counter what he calls growing security threats as ties between Moscow and the West have hit new lows over the war Russia launched in Ukraine in 2022. The intercontinental missile, launched from an underwater position in the White Sea off Russia's northern coast, hit a target thousands of kilometers away on the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia's far east. The ministry did not say when the test occurred. The Beret-class strategic missile cruiser is equipped with 16 Bulava missiles and modern torpedo weapons. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said Ukraine has made excellent progress towards EU accession days ahead of key report on Kiev's membership bid. Standing next to the Ukrainian president, she said Ukraine had reached many milestones despite the war with Russia. Highlighting Kiev's judicial reforms, EU assessment due on Wednesday is expected to say how far Ukraine has advanced in fulfilling various economic, legal and other criteria to clear the way for accession talks in December. EU's 27 members are due at a summit in December to decide whether to allow Kiev to begin accession negotiations, which would require unanimous backing.
I want to tell you how impressed we are by the reforms you've made in the midst of a war. You should never forget you are fighting an existential war, and at the same time you're deeply reforming your country. You have reached many milestones, reforming your justice system, curbing the oligarchs' grip, tackling money laundering and much more. I know that you are in the process of completing outstanding reforms. If this happens, and I'm confident, Ukraine can reach its ambitious goal of moving to the next stage in the accession process.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense minister has ordered an investigation into an alleged Russian ballistic missile attack on Ukrainian assault brigade after reports that more than 20 soldiers were killed during an award ceremony. Ukraine's armed forces say that Russia attacked the Zaporizhzhia region with a ballistic missile. It was not clear how many soldiers died. The statements came after a flurry of earlier reports on Ukrainian social media and from military bloggers that more than 20 soldiers were killed in a village close to the front lines in Zaporizhzhia during an award ceremony commemorating the Artillery Day on Friday. Russian Defense Ministry said only that Russian forces inflicted fire on a unit of Ukraine's assault brigade in the region, killing up to 30 personnel. Both Russia and Ukraine have often underestimated their military casualties in the 20-month-long war, while exaggerated losses they claim to have inflicted upon each other. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has denied the war with Russia had reached a stalemate, says more work with allies was needed to strengthen air defenses. His comments come days after Ukraine's Commander-in-Chief, General Valery Zaluzhny, said the conflict is moving towards a new stage of static and attritional fighting, a phase that could allow Moscow to rebuild its military power. Zelensky acknowledged there had been difficulties in the war, now in its 21st month, and that Kiev had yet to achieve any major successes in its counteroffensive, adding that Israel-Gaza war is taking away the focus from the conflict in Ukraine, accusing Russia of going forward with the invasion with that aim. Kenyan President William Ruto said Kenya is determined to push forward its contributions to environmental protection and global sustainable development. He added Kenya and China share a complementary relationship in cooperation around green development. Ruto added, "We made a deliberate, intentional decision as a country to chart the way towards a much more sustainable future, both for ourselves and globally."
We have a complementary relationship. China spearheads technology around renewable energy. Kenya is a frontline state on advocating for climate action that enables us to unlock the huge potential that we have, especially in the African continent, on renewable energy. Whether you're talking about solar, geothermal, wind, hydro, that is the space where Kenya is pushing.
More than 500 migrants were rescued in the Atlantic Ocean of Spain's Canary Islands as the number of people arriving so far this year neared an all-time record posted in 2006. 2 dead bodies were among those rescued from 4 boats in the waters of El. The number of arrivals has recently jumped as milder weather and calmer seas have made it more feasible to attempt crossing from Africa. The Spanish government said it would create additional emergency accommodation for some 3,000 migrants in military barracks and hotels and hostels. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Hamburg Airport in Germany remains closed after a man drove a car through a barrier onto the grounds of the airport on Saturday. All airport terminals are evacuated and the airport is currently closed for takeoff and landings. A total of 27 flights have been affected by the move. Increasing prices of kitchen products has led to a short-term inflation in Pakistan, surging by some 29.88%. World Bank also warns Pakistan to be at a tipping point of poverty, with 40% of its population below the poverty line. MRTV's nightlife show streamed Myanmar-Korea musical show to exchange both countries' cultures, and for Korean K-pop lovers, the creative and active entertainment program was attended by many officials and students. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on a tour of Southeast Asia. Singapore Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong to lead the ruling party before general elections. And Arab countries plan to launch new climate initiatives at COP28.
A platform for the developing world, amplifying the voice of the global south with a focus on the growing economies, resolving the conflicts, showcasing the culture, tradition, heritage and diversity. Watch Voice of the Global South at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. Israel's land operation intensifies in Gaza, particularly in the north, amid diplomatic stalemate over humanitarian ceasefire. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas in West Bank amidst Gaza conflict to also visit Turkey. India and South Africa clash at Eden Gardens. India off to a good start after opting to bat fast. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has kicked off a tour of Southeast Asia, starting with a visit to Malaysia. It's aimed at strengthening ties with countries in the region and to boost security cooperation with them. DD India's Patrick Falk gets us more.
Well, Prime Minister Kishida's tour will also include a visit to the Philippines, and it's already about strengthening bilateral relations with these countries. And in particular, he wants to strengthen maritime security cooperation with Malaysia and the Philippines, and to reassure the Southeast Asian nations that Japan is ready to maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, even as America's attention is very much focused on the Middle East right now. Reports have suggested that strengthening that security cooperation with Manila will be a much more straightforward affair than it will be to do so with Malaysia. It is welcomed by the Philippines in many ways, as it is embroiled in this intensifying dispute with Beijing over territories in the South China Sea. Malaysia, by contrast, according to reports, is somewhat skeptical about deepening any security alliance, and is skeptical also about Tokyo's official securities assistance program, which was passed in April and essentially offers like-minded countries the ability to purchase security and defense equipment from Japan. Notably, it was described by China's state-run Global Times as ominous. It also described Prime Minister Kishida's visit as trouble-provoking. But the visit does offer Malaysia an opportunity to strengthen relations with Tokyo, to act as a counterbalance to its relations with Beijing.
Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has said Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong will take over from him as leader of the ruling People's Action Party before the next general elections due by November 2025. With the PAP widely expected to continue dominating elections, Wong is likely to become Singapore's next Prime Minister. He would be the fourth premier to lead the Asian financial hub since its independence in 1965. Lee, who has served as Prime Minister since 2004, is the eldest son of Singapore's founding father, Lee Kuan Yew. Lee praised Wong and his team for the handling of the COVID crisis and said they were increasingly setting the national agenda. 3 UN agencies have called for protection of children and families as Pakistan has started a campaign to deport foreigners residing illegally in Pakistan. UN agencies say children face serious protection risks while on the move in Pakistan, in detention centers, crossing borders and upon return to Afghanistan. UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, IOM, the UN Migration Agency, and UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, continue to appeal to the international community to increase support for hosting vulnerable children and families and refugees in Pakistan, say a press release issued by the 3 UN agencies. Children face risks of physical threats to their safety, family separation, distress, fear, abuse, and exploitation. Amidst Pakistan's swift anti-migrant crackdown, a Taliban minister has issued warning to Pakistan regarding the treatment of its Afghan refugees fleeing, urging its rival neighbor to not be cruel to Afghans leaving the country. He warned that Pakistan cannot seize any assets by any rule or law, as such moves will be questioned. Currently, tens of thousands are heading to border areas fearing detention and deportation as Pakistan security forces go door to door searching for undocumented foreigners. And countries moved a step closer to getting a fund off the ground to help poor states damaged by climate disasters. A special UN committee tasked with implementation of the fund met for a 5th time in Abu Dhabi this week. Deadlock was witnessed in Egypt last month over finalizing recommendations that will be put to governments when they meet for the annual climate summit COP28 in Dubai in less than 4 weeks' time. The goal is to get the fund up and running by 2024. To get all countries on board, it was agreed the World Bank would serve as an interim trustee and host of the fund for a 4-year period. Meanwhile, Arab countries plan to launch new climate initiatives and complete number of previously announced initiatives at the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference, popularly known as COP28, which provides a major opportunity for these nations to enhance their efforts and actively participate in finding fair solutions to the challenges of climate change. Arab countries support the implementation of the Paris Agreement, which was adopted at COP21 to achieve net zero emissions, sustainable economic development, and addressing climate change to balance economic growth and environmental protection. Although the contribution of Arab countries to carbon emissions is limited, Arab region is one of the most affected by climate change. This is according to Abu Dhabi-based Arab Monetary Fund. In Bangladesh, a 48-hour countrywide blockade of road, rail and waterways has been enforced by Bangladesh Nationalist Party and like-minded opposition parties. It was marked by strange incidences of violence. Opposition parties, including banned Bangladesh Jamaat-e-Islami, are enforcing a 48-hour blockade demanding the current government's resignation and installation of a non-party neutral administration to oversee the 12th parliamentary election. At least 4 men of BNP and its affiliated organizations were injured, and 5 vehicles were vandalized during a clash with police on the Bogura-Dhaka highway this morning. 27 platoons of border guard Bangladesh have been deployed in Dhaka and adjoining districts to maintain law and order situation. The blockade that started at 6 a.m. on Sunday will end at 6 p.m. on Monday. And Prasar Bharati's special correspondent Naval Sen Parmar joins us from Dhaka. Naval Sen, give us the context of the blockade call by Bangladesh opposition.
Hello.
Naval Sen, can you hear me? Can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can.
Okay, if you could tell us the context of this blockade call by the opposition in Bangladesh, if you could give us the background to that first.
Yes, the main opposition party, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, and the other affiliated organizations and the other party like Jamaat-e-Islami, which is banned in Bangladesh, are demanding since a very long time for the resignation of Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And their another demand is to hold the next parliament election, which is due in January 2024 under the party-neutral government or national government. And for that, they are holding a rallies and enforcing a blockade. This is the second phase of blockade. Before that, they called for a grand rally in Dhaka, and then Hartal, and then another blockade of 3 days, which was started from 31st October to 2nd November. And then another blockade is there. So opposition's one-point demand is to pressurize the government for the resignation of Sheikh Hasina and then holding the next election under the party-neutral national government for the election. Yeah.
Right, Naval Sen, how is the blockade enacted on the ground as we speak? We learned about some instances of violence as well. What is the impact on daily life in Bangladesh?
Yes, there are stray incidents of violence and torching of vehicle on the roads. But this is the second phase. First phase of blockade was more violent than this one, which is 48-hour blockade, which started from today morning. The intercity bus service and the intercity transportation is mainly affected due to the blockade. Otherwise, in cities like Dhaka, Chittagong, and other district places, heavy law enforcement agencies' presence are preventing the violent actor to perform or enforce the blockade. So in Dhaka and the other cities, there are less impact of blockade. But on the highways and in countryside, there are many people who are enforcing blockade with the help of violent action like torching vehicles and obstructing the public transport. While in district place also there are heavy presence of the police as well as the BGB border guard Bangladesh. So by and large there is a less impact of this phase of blockade. However, the people's normal routine life, it is heavily impacted, and those who are depending on their daily work or daily wage, they are the people who are most affected by the opposition's blockade and the violence.
Naval Sen Parmar, thank you for joining us with those updates. And as Delhi's air quality worsens, hospitals are seeing an influx of patients complaining of chest infection. Sanitation workers remain the worst affected. Jessica Taneja is joining us from New Delhi. Jessica, how bad is it being outdoors in the national capital?
Well, it's almost like smoking 30 cigarettes a day, Shupendu, and things don't look so great at this point. Well, the weather forecast, as we've heard from the IMD officials, they say no respite for the next at least 6 to 7 days. So one will have to wait and see on how we're going to be able to breathe in this toxic haze that we're surrounded with for the next few weeks. And if you look at the statistics, they're grim at this point. We've been hearing from a lot of these new studies that have emerged that the pollution in the national capital is worse than what it was seen in the last 3 years. And that has a lot to do because of the weather conditions. There are no rains, the wind speeds are quite slow. But that is just one of the factors. We've seen how the overall impact of contributing factors has been on Delhi's air quality at this point. I spoke to people on the streets as well to find out as to what they are going through, and also spoke to the weather officials as to what they can expect. Here's what I saw.
If I don't work, how will I eat? No matter what happens, I will have to work.
Ashok is a sanitation worker. His livelihood is on the line, but he can't escape toxic air.
I inhale this dust every day. We have gotten masks since lockdown ended.
Like Ashok, Shamu Devi has been cleaning the streets for the last 3 decades. And this noxious setting has not only affected her cognitive and physical performance, but also resulting in additional medical expenses.
Cough and cold has become severe due to the rising air pollution. I cover my face while working. I have no option but to work.
Dr. Nikhil Modi says long-term exposure can result in abnormal lung function or even cancer.
You inhale more, the chances of damage is more. So maybe even in a young age, they may acquire COPD-like problems, which we used to see after 40-50 years of age. Now what we see, lung cancer comes in early age, which we used to see after 60 years of age.
With the harvest season picking up pace, instances of farm fires from the neighboring states have increased significantly.
Last year, the city's air quality was good or satisfactory only for 68 days. In fact, the average resident of Delhi is losing up to 12 years of life to air pollution. And this toxic haze is likely to continue.
Apart from vehicular and industrial pollution, unfavorable weather conditions could make matters worse in the next few days.
If wind becomes stronger, more than 10 kmph, for example, it also disperses the air pollutants. If wind becomes weaker, for example, as it is today, wind is varying between 5 to 8 kilometers during daytime, and at night time it's almost calm or very light wind. In such situations, it does not help in dispersing the air pollutants.
Year after year, the scale of crisis remains unprecedented. Delhi's health hazard continues to remain an environmental afterthought. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
Delhi air condition really going from bad to worse there. Jessica, thanks very much for joining us with those updates. Let's take a look at other stories making news. Indian Prime Minister says states need continuity in governance and development. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a public rally in the central state of Madhya Pradesh ahead of assembly elections in the state to be held on 17th November. Ahead of the Indian festival of Diwali, the state of West Bengal has taken a significant step towards reducing pollution by deciding to sell only green crackers with QR codes. Crackers that are not labelled as green are illegal and totally banned. Famous Indian sand artist Sudarshan Patnaik creates a sand sculpture as Indian cricketer Virat Kohli celebrates his birthday today. The sculpture has 35 sand baths as the Indian skipper turns 35. Time for a short break, still to come on DD India News Hour. India emerges as top priority for global tech titans over China. In World Cup cricket, India and South Africa clash at the Eden Gardens.
platform for the developing world, amplifying the voice of the global south with a focus on the growing economies, resolving the conflicts, showcasing the culture, tradition, heritage and diversity. Watch Voice of the Global South at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. India is making strides to become a global hub of high-quality tech manufacturing. Global tech giants are expanding their manufacturing operations in the country, making the South Asian country a strategic hub for global supply chain. Alphabet Inc.'s Google is setting up manufacturing unit for its flagship Pixel 8 smartphones in India. Apple has already started assembling iPhones in the country for some time. South Korean tech giant Samsung has set up the world's biggest mobile manufacturing facility in the Indian city of Noida. According to Washington Times report, there have been a 400% increase in US and European greenfield investment into India between 2021 and 22. The report says Make in India initiative by the government has proven to be a catalyst for the tech companies to explore multitude opportunities in the country. Further, India's skilled labour force and favourable policies attract tech investments from across the globe. The United Auto Workers Union say its tentative contract deal with General Motors, it includes plans for investments around electric vehicles. It will raise wages for thousands of US hourly workers at units with lower wage tiers than at vehicle assembly operations. The UAW released more details of its tentative 4.5 years deal with GM on Saturday. Now that preliminary approvals for all three contracts are done, UAW leaders will spend the next 2 weeks working to win yes votes from rank-and-file union members at the Detroit 3. The tentative deal was first announced on October 30th. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time for all the action from the world of sports. First, let's talk about cricket. India takes on South Africa in the ICC Cricket World Cup at the Eden Gardens in Kolkata. India got off to a solid start after Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill put on 62 for the opening wicket. Sharma scored 40 before he was out by Kagiso Rabada. Following this, Virat Kohli and Shreyas Iyer assumed the mantle. Both have scored half-centuries when the reports last came in. India was 227 for the loss of 3 wickets. Earlier, India retained the same team while South Africa made the change, including Tabraiz Shamsi in place of Gerald Coetzee. Both the teams have qualified for the semi-finals. And DD India correspondent Narayan joins us live from near Eden Gardens. Narayan, can you hear me? All right.
Yes,
Narayan, just take us through the highlights of the match so far. India off to a good start. It seems to be marching towards a big total. How is the match poised from here?
Good start by India here, Shubhendu. The way they started, Rohit Sharma, just the way he set the template in every match. Here also he's done the same thing, scoring at a rate of 100 and strike rate of 166, and that's the big thing. When you just thrash their frontline bowlers like this, definitely it puts pressure on them. The Marco Jansen was the key man for the South Africa in this tournament. He was one of the best wicket taker bowler in the power play, and when Rohit Sharma gave him such a treatment, definitely it looks like that it puts the bowler on the back foot, and after that it helped the upcoming batsman also to tackle the bowler in the same way. But the way after that a good partnership was stitched between Virat Kohli and Shreyas Iyer, and both of them helped the India to, after losing 2 wickets, to come out of that situation and help India to rebuild their innings. And right now, Indian team is scoring with a we can say run rate of more than 6, and definitely it's going to be around the way if they will play, they will cross the 300 mark, and chasing a 300 run at this wicket, we can say really a challenging thing. And the way things are going. And right now KL Rahul is at the wicket, and hoping that the Indian team will just the momentum they have gained will continue and just set the standards here and will put a good total on the board. Good thing that the way Shreyas Iyer is playing, and he's scoring 2 back-to-back half centuries in the match, in this match also. And the most important thing, he has solved the number 4 conundrum for the India. For the very long time we are seeking for a player who can just give that sort of balance to the team. And if you take a look, his numbers in the past 3 years exceptional, and he is one of the finest number 4 in the world of cricket. If you take a look, his average, it is exceptional, and the way he is getting, we can say he is giving a template, setting a template at this position is a good thing. He started slowly to consolidate the Indian innings, but after that he smashed their bowlers and have played a fantastic knock of 77 runs for India. And we are hoping that Virat Kohli, who is also in his 70s here, will hoping that he will complete a century here on his 35th birthday and will equal the record of Sachin Tendulkar. Sachin has 49 centuries in the ODI, and Kohli is one short of it, and we are hoping today he will do that thing.
Narayan, thanks very much for getting us the latest from the Eden Gardens. That's all for this edition of TT India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on TT India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching TT India News Hour. Namaskar.